Welcome to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson, show number 683. We've got a lot of stuff to cover today. We're going to be doing a little bit of a Halloween show, so stick around for that. We'll be talking from a technology standpoint, of course, about the universe and where did it come from? Why are we here? We're going to answer those questions today. Questions that could never be answered by any other radio show out there. So that should be a whole lot of fun. But we'll be talking a little bit about that. We'll have some paranormal stuff on, and we'll be covering some other stuff too. We'll be talking about some advertising, and Small Dog Electronics is going to join us today. In fact, one of the managers up at the Manchester store. And we'll be talking with him about the latest announcements out of Apple, what's happening there. We're also going to be talking about helping your kids to be millionaires in the future, some stuff about early childhood development and also relationships and relationship development. And as always, we're going to start out the show with some review of some of the articles in the news this week. It should be kind of fun. I've been posting a few different articles that you might have caught dealing with these new autonomous cars. So I want to point you, if you are a Facebook user or a Twitter user, go online to craigradio.com. Craig, of course, C-R-A-I-G, radio.com. And right there on the Craig Radio site, you will see links to my Twitter account as well as Facebook account, so you can follow me. And I post anywhere between 2 and 5 different articles a day based on what's happening out there in the world, things that everybody needs to know. Also, if you're more of a business type, if you follow me on LinkedIn, which again, at craigradio.com, you'll find a link to me, you'll be able to see the articles specifically related to business, things like marketing, sales, how to improve your business using technology. All of those go to my LinkedIn feed. So, craigradio.com, and these are articles that you will see on those feeds, and as I said, a couple of them you might have already seen. This first one is from Wired Magazine. Doug Newcomb, who's also on Twitter, has an article on there about the feds and what the federal government's trying to do here with the rise of the robo car. NHTSA Administrator David Strickland has been trying to figure out where they should go with regulations, and what's one of the most difficult parts of all of this is that there are multiple categories of the self-driving cars. You might remember Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie, and they're sitting in a car, I think in fact it was a GM car, that was driving itself and you had to drive the last mile. Well, that's one type of car that's an automatic car out there. And one example of one of the first systems that's going to be out is from Cadillac. They've got something they call Super Cruise. And what this does is it takes some of the lane centering technology that we've seen over the years where different car companies have sensors that kind of watch the lines and figure out if you are drifting out of your lane. Well, they've taken that now and made it so the car will center itself in the lane, and also the adaptive cruise control that's been available for a number of different cars. Now, the adaptive cruise control is kind of neat because it keeps you an appropriate distance from the vehicle in front of you. The idea behind adaptive cruise ultimately is that it could really eliminate traffic jams as cars don't slow down for look-a-loo things. People aren't just changing lanes willy-nilly and causing the traffic to slow down because somebody wants to be in the fast lane or they want to switch to another lane because they think that lane's faster than the lane they're in and end up causing a traffic jam. So adaptive cruise control is thought to be able to help prevent that in the future. Well, bottom line is that the Super Cruise from Cadillac is one of the examples, and there's other manufacturers working on this type of system, is a hands-off and feet-off driving system. But you still, as the driver here, have to continually monitor the road and traffic. But this is probably one of the first types of systems that will be out there that are trying to figure out how do they regulate. The next one they're calling the conditionally automated driving. So in this second type of automated car, the driver can give all of the control authority for the car over to the car itself. In other words, he's not going to be driving with his feet or his hands. But the idea is that based on traffic and the weather conditions and other environmental factors here, the car might have to be occasionally driven by you. So it's hands off and feet off, but it's also eyes off. So you don't have to pay any attention to the road until the vehicle or the driver decides it's time for the driver to resume manual control. And then the third type is fully automated mode, and this is a little bit more difficult, but this is where the driver has some destination and navigation input, but isn't expected to be available at all for control of the vehicle. So the responsibility for the safe operation of the car is resting solely on these automated systems. Now, I'm thinking, in fact, when I posted this, I'm thinking about terrorists and how wonderful this would be for them, because ultimately you could hack these systems, take control of cars. It's kind of scary. There's also, and this isn't mentioned by the NHTSA, but there's another system in development right now where traffic lights broadcast information about when they're going to change colors, so that the car now knows, gee, if I slow down here to 20 miles an hour, for instance, I will not have to brake and I won't be sitting there idling at the light. So some of these systems are reliant on external factors like the one I just mentioned. Some of the systems use mesh technology that NASCAR has been using for a while, so the cars can communicate with each other and negotiate speeds and rates of travel and which lanes they're all in. And some of them are the car itself being strictly autonomous. So this is really kind of cool. The feds are trying to develop a roadmap here going forward in order to help implement this technology efficiently, effectively, and safely. And it's going to be a legal nightmare. What else is new? When we're dealing with new technology, the feds and the courts, everybody is always behind the eight ball. And in this case, behind the wheel. I've been waiting to say that all along here with these autonomous cars. Now, there are some already on the road right now. We have Google, who's been using them, driving around and doing testing with them, but they always have a driver ready to kind of take over. It reminds me of the old cars that you used to use for the driver's ed, where the instructor can take over, hit the brake, steer the steering wheel, do whatever needs to happen. And ultimately, of course, that's a very good first step. You're listening to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson, going through some articles in the news this week. Some of these I have posted already at craigradio.com. You'll see them from there on your Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn feeds. Kind of depends on what kind of information you like. But some of them will be out over the next week or so, too. This next one here is really interesting because, I had a couple of shows about the new patent laws and copyright, the whole idea of intellectual property and how it's changed here in the U.S. Well, a handful of patents, according to the BBC, from Apple have been ruled invalid. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has ruled that 20 patents relating to scroll technology lack novelty. That's for Apple patents. In August, a California court awarded Apple $1 billion in damages after ruling Samsung had infringed patents. Samsung had submitted preliminary ruling from the patent office to the judge who's considering appeals in the case. The preliminary ruling follows an anonymous request in May to re-examine some of Apple's patents for touchscreen heuristics. Some of the patents were rejected because there was not enough of an inventive step between the prior technology and Apple's patent. And that's what I've been yelling and screaming about for years, and particularly here over the last year and through next year as the new patent laws all go into effect, because things are going to get much, much worse in some respects and a little bit better in some other respects. So Samsung's looking for a retrial of the patent case and is saying, hey, listen, the patent's invalid, so how can you find us guilty? The so-called rubber bouncing patents, back to the BBC article, also known as over-scroll bounce, refer to the bouncing animation that takes place when a user scrolls past the end of a page. Samsung has already found a workaround to the over-scroll bounce patent, although if Apple's patents were found to be invalid, it is likely the feature would make a return to handsets sold in the U.S. I agree. I think that was a stupid patent to award to Apple or anybody else out there. It's just not innovative enough. Frankly, maybe they could go for copyright for some sort of a look and feel, but that, I think, would be it. Otherwise, it gets unreasonable. It's untenable to be able to make new machines. You're listening to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson. We're going through some articles in the news this week that I posted up on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Kind of depends on what you're interested in, but you can find all of those at craigradio.com. And thanks to all the people who are following us on those sites. I really appreciate it. And I love for more of you to engage, because we've had a couple of conversations on the Twitter as well as Facebook here about some of the issues that have come up. And thanks to the people who've been retweeting too. I appreciate that. All right, cough, cough. Here come the hybrid Laplets. This is based on Windows 8, and boy, what a mess that is. Of course, Apple has a good standing tablet right now, great operating system that works in the tablet space, another one for the desktop. What has happened at Windows, at Microsoft, is they said, hey, listen, we want the same operating system, more or less, at least from the look and feel standpoint, to be on all of the devices. Now, Microsoft has been notorious over the years for not really having the same operating system. They call them all Windows, but there's 8 different versions for different types of embedded applications, for different types of processors. It's a complete rewrite of major parts of the operating system. Well, Windows 8 is trying to pull it all together, and they have completely changed the interface. Now, most people, I saw a study last week, and I posted that as well. 7 out of 8 people found Windows 8 to be confusing. In fact, so confusing that they thought they really had to learn all over again how to use a computer. Now, that's an interesting problem, because if you have a new computer, or the prospect for a new computer, and you say, well, if I switch to Apple, I have to learn a new operating system. If I switch to Windows version 8, I have to learn a new operating system, which would be true if you're a Windows 7 user or any prior version to 8. What do you want to do? Right? Do you want to keep investing your time in Microsoft? Or do you want to switch over to something that's much more popular? It's been more stable historically, has a really nice integrated universe, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later today with Small Dog, because Apple controls everything, the hardware and the software. It just works when you interact with your phone and your desktop computer and your laptop and your tablet. It's just a better way to go. So is this ultimately going to mean a major win for Apple? Well, I posted an article this week where Ballmer, the president or the CEO of Microsoft, is really defending this. Well, part of what they are coming out with Windows are these Laplets. These are kind of laptop computers that are kind of a cross between a laptop and a tablet, frankly, which is why they're calling them Laplets. And they kind of slide around, they fold, they twist in order to get the screens up. They can do a whole lot. And Microsoft has played with this type of technology before with some of its vendors. You might remember them, the laptops where the screens turn around and become a touch screen and stuff. We'll see what happens here, but Microsoft is in a lot of trouble if they don't get this all working the way, frankly, everybody needs it to work. And I don't know that they'll ever get there. Another interesting article here I posted this week. If you have a website and you're concerned about your search engine optimization, there is a way now to get Google's PageRank to kind of help you out. If you have low-value sites who are linking to you, in other words, sites that Google doesn't think are particularly good sites, did you know that you get penalized? And it isn't just Google, it's all the other guys. You get penalized and you will not show up as a higher ranking site yourself. So Google has this disavow function now. as maybe a solution. So I posted a big article on that this week. A new search engine here for what's called the very long tail. It's called Million Short. Look it up, try it. I played with it a little bit this week, millionshort.com. And this allows you to get results from other than the first million results or for top million or you name it, 50,000 websites out there on the internet. So it's a way around some of Google's filters. And another big article this week on Robo Doctors.